Okay, it's April 6th. This video is only going to be a fraction as good as it could be because I am tired and disheartened and discouraged. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be doing anything anymore. But I'm going to try this, and I was just inside South Station where Moron sat next to me and scraped his metal chair on the ground for him to know he was going to sit next to me and make me feel uncomfortable while I was trying to do some work to illuminate some Bible stuff. And another one sat directly across from me almost, glared at me, stopped with holding his phone, stopped in front of my table for a little bit, and sat across from me. This is the type of fucking research I do all day. So it's tiring. Just anything to, I mean, in some ways, I can sympathize with their plight, because if you think about how unoriginal and unimaginative and unintelligent they are, they cannot possibly ever in their lives have more of an impact on the world of spirituality, literature, art, culture, than to distract someone like me, even to get me from, I'm never at 100%, but say I'm 70%, to get me from 70% to 60% for just 2 minutes by doing something retarded and stupid. That's about as much as an impact as they're going to have on the world as they will have in their entire lives. So I can see why they do it from that sense. Anyway, here we go. So this is an equilateral triangle with 14, each side 14 units long, triangles of 180 degrees. All of the angles are equal, so it has three 60-degree angles. This represents the genealogy of Jesus, as mentioned at the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew, which is generally the first Gospel. It says, this is the genealogy of Jesus Christ the Messiah. Sometimes that is translated as, this is an account of the origins of Jesus Christ. So it starts off with Abraham, and so it provides a long list of this guy and that guy and this guy, and there's an event or two mixed in there. But then at the end, it does a curious thing in Matthew 1:17. It breaks it into three equal segments of 14 generations long. It says, well, there were 14 generations from Abraham to David, 14 generations from David to the exile in Babylon, which is a little arbitrary, and then 14 generations from exile in Babylon to Jesus the Messiah. So you end up with a kind of a cyclical trip. The end is the beginning when you draw the triangle like this, but it is broken into three segments, and those segments are of equal lengths. There are 14, and it's just curious how it kind of points that out, like it has some significance. So if you think about when Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am, people have, interpret all kinds of this to mean all kinds of things. This is a reference to this genealogy. You go from Abraham, you go up to David, 14, then 14 generations of the exile in Babylon, then 14 generations over to Jesus, and you're back where you were. Before Abraham was, I am. So Abraham and Jesus are right there, kind of contiguous. Now, Jesus also will say in the last chapter of the Bible, Revelation 22, I am the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. So first and last, Alpha and Omega, beginning and end, those are three equal segments. So here we have an equilateral triangle. Three equal segments, first and last, Alpha and Omega, beginning and end. So if you think about three lines of equal length, that is a trigram in Taoist symbology, which means heaven. Now Jesus Christ rose in 3 days. So you have a unit, 3 units of time, 14 generations, 3 days. 1, 2, 3, 3 units of time. He also performed the wedding at Cana on the 3rd day. Lots of things happened in threes. There were the gifts of the Magi were gold, frankincense, and myrrh. That's 3. There were 3 people on Mount Calvary with Jesus. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He often says things like that. Jesus foretold that Peter would deny him 3 times, which he did. And then when he rose, he says to Peter 3 times, Do you love me? Feed my sheep. Tend my sheep. Feed my sheep. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Lots of threes. It's a pyramid. And Jesus was born in Bethlehem, but he went to Egypt almost right away. His father Joseph had a dream that warned him that Herod was killing all the boys under 2 years old in an effort one of them would be Jesus, because he heard about Jesus from the Magi, the wise men that went to visit Jesus, and he knew he was a threat, so he wanted to kill him. So they left and went to Egypt, and they stayed there until Herod died, which was a couple years-ish or so, or whatever. But the point is that when Jesus was an infant and a very, very youngin', he was living in Egypt. So, and that it says in Matthew 2, that is to fulfill the words of the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son. And if you think about a woman's breast, when Jesus would have been breastfeeding from Mary, a pyramid, one of the things that a pyramid represents, by the way, this is a triangle, but it's a simplistic representation of a pyramid, is a woman's breast like Mother Earth. So anyway, so that's kind of his Edenic, paradisical time, when and it's also analogous to the exodus from Egypt of the Hebrew people. So it's like the childhood of the Hebrew people was in Egypt, and the childhood of Jesus was in Egypt, and so you have the pyramid is important, and Egyptian symbology is important. Jesus says that the Queen of the South will rise to condemn this generation. Egypt is south of where he said that, and Egypt had female pharaohs, female queens, and also female deities, which Hebrew culture didn't have any of that stuff. Hebrew culture is all super patriarchal dumbass, and Jesus thought that was stupid, and that's one way he had of saying it. So anyway, another thing that Jesus says when he talks about the Queen of the South, he says the Queen of the South came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, came from a long way away, and then he says, and something greater than Solomon is here. So Solomon had a temple, he built a temple, he's famous for that, and but that temple is a lot smaller. This isn't built to scale, but you get the idea. It's a lot smaller than, for instance, the Great Pyramid of Giza. So something greater than Solomon is here on one level refers to the fact that the big pyramids, the Great Pyramids, are a good bit larger than Solomon's temple. And you might say, well, that's good. And in one sense it could be actually great, or it could be like a cancer. It could be like Solomon's temple was the seed, and then other stuff grew around it like weeds, like the parable of the weeds, or the parable of the sower, where a man sows some seed and then it produces 30 to 60 to 100 times more than was sown. That is overgrowth. That is cancerous, potentially. It could be bad. So another thing that this means is you have Solomon's temple. There are 3 books that are attributed to King Solomon. They are the Song of Songs, or Song of Solomon. It's got 2 different names, but it's one book. It's a love story. It's erotic poetry. Then there's a book of Proverbs and a book of Ecclesiastes. So there are 1, 2, 3 books of Solomon written by Solomon. So you can imagine those 3 books here, and then here's the rest of maybe the Old Testament, or also the Old Testament and New Testament. Let's say it's the Old Testament. So you got the 3 books, Song of Songs, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes, and then everything else. And it's not that this is necessarily cancerous, but maybe this is the seed, and all of this is an echo of it. And an echo can be high fidelity or low fidelity, so you have to kind of think about it that way. All right, so I mentioned the Queen of the South and something greater than Solomon, and again, if you dismantle a pyramid, Jesus talks about if you destroy this temple, I will raise it again in 3 days. Well, if you dismantle this, look what you get. You just plop it back up, make like a little Tower of Babel with the 3 lines that you take apart, and then you get heaven. You create heaven. So you take the temple down, you dismantle it, and then you end up with heaven. That's kind of cool. All right, so mentioned the parable of the sower, parable of the weeds. I mentioned that out of Egypt I called my son as a prophecy that's mentioned in Matthew 2. I mentioned Herod and the massacre of the innocents. Okay, so now you think about Solomon. He said something greater than Solomon is here. So it's like Solomon, but also different. So Solomon was known for his wisdom. He had a dream as a young man when he first took power, and he was asked. God asked him, "What do you want?" And he said, I want wisdom. I want to be a good leader for people. And God said, God, that's a You didn't ask for anything for yourself. You asked for that. That's great. No one who was ever born will be like you. You'll be so fucking smart. You'll be unbelievable. And one of the canonical stories about Solomon's wisdom is the splitting the baby story. There's this baby. It's the parentage. It's disputed. One woman has lost her baby and is trying to claim this baby as her own, and another baby actually was the mother. And Solomon's solution was, okay, you know what, you guys can share the baby. I'm going to cut the baby in half, and you can each have half. And then the actual mother of the baby says, no, don't kill the baby. Give it to the other woman. And then Solomon knows who the actual mother is and gives the baby to the actual mother. Okay, so if you take this pyramid and Solomon's temple and you split it like you split the baby, you bisect the line. You know, there's a 60-degree angle, 60-degree angle, 60-degree angle. So you bisect the line, and you end up creating two equal pyramids that are actually, now these are not two equal pyramids, two triangles, and they are right triangles. Okay, so you got a right triangle and a right triangle. What you have done there is you have bisected a 60-degree angle. So there's 30 degrees over here and 30 degrees over here. Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 silver coins. And see, that's the symbol for degree is like a small coin. So this is like heads on one side and tails on the other. This is the betrayal of Judas. That is from the book of Genesis, the knowledge of good and evil. What has happened is a paradisical state that was pure of heart. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the poor in spirit, unpopulated, unhaunted, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What has happened is we have split the baby because of what Judas did. Judas was a traitor. So now we have to, because there are traitors around, you have to watch out for traitors. So you split the baby, you massacre the innocents in us. You end up with 30 silver coins, the heads of 30 silver coins and the tails of 30 silver coins. So it's as if when you're interacting with people, you flip a coin. Is this person good? Is this person bad? Can I get better at detecting whether they are good or bad so that it's not so much of a coin flip? So you have this bifurcation, the splitting. It's like we get cut in half because of betrayal, because of Judasing. So if you go down here now, it's going to get a little complicated. If you think about human vision, all right, Mary Magdalene, it is said in Luke, Mary Magdalene had 7 demons driven from her. Here they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids and a guy who wouldn't leave her alone and had to keep being driven from her. That is her family, 7. So she has 2 eyes. Okay, so the light, she looks at her family, 7 people with 2 eyes. The light from the sun, hits them and then hits each of her eyes. There's 7 on the left eye and 7 on the right eye. Now that's the outer eye. That's the outer lens. Then that goes into her. We're now going into Mary's skull. Okay, this is anybody's skull, but she happens to have 7 kids, so that's why we're using this. Jesus is kind of like a kid, but 7 family members. So the light goes in. So light travels in and lands on the back of her retina. So she's got 7 more copies of them. She's got them on the outside of her eye, and now she's got the back of her retina inside her skull, 7 more. Then that gets translated. That light gets translated into electrochemical signals. So the light, they once again get duplicated, 7 more. So we basically again do another bisection. So you end up with 7 on the outside of the eye, 7 on the back of the retina, and then 7 as electrochemical signals. And then they come together and they get merged into a single image, which you can think about it as like the yin yang symbol. So if you close your left eye and look at something, and then close your right eye and look at the same thing, you'll see there's a little bit of difference. So like vision itself, like if you think about the yin yang symbol, you get what you got from the left eye might be black, what you get from the right eye might be white, and then it's just some of like, it gets these little small holes, like the degree symbols on the yin yang. They represent like the smoothing out, the merging into one single image of what comes in to two different eyeballs, and then it gets passed into the head as light, translated into electrochemical signal, and then you get one thing. So, but then you have to now, because you've been Judased, you have this one thing. It's a heads or tails coin flip. Well, is it good or is it bad? You think about the crown of thorns. That is circular, like a coin. And you have thorns. Think about this as an eyeball, and all these things are puncturing it and squeezing it. This is the adulterous woman surrounded by accusers. She's adulterous. She's a woman, Mary, but she's got two eyes. So she sees something with her left eye and something with her right eye. She sees something and tries to determine whether it's good or bad. Is it knowledge of good and evil? So she is adulterous in that way. And she is surrounded by accusers. Now, of course, Jesus shows up and gets them all to leave. But one of the places where he clears a place of this type of thing is when he clears the temple, and he clears the temple of money changers. So you think about this as a coin, again, where you have to flip heads or tails because of Judas's. The money changers are the people he gets rid of. That's who he's clearing the temple. The people who cause forking and bifurcation in people's minds as to whether they can trust someone or whether they can't. Jesus will say, gouge out your right eye if it's your problem. So if you have people who are causing this kind of forking, we have to get rid of them. That's part of the problem. Now, these types of accusers, these type of accusations, these little needles going into Mary's singular, it's interesting because when you look at something, you look at it with two eyes, but you only see one image. You see one thing. Our experience is one thing. So here's our experience, and it's being infringed upon by all this judgment, worry, doubt, insecurity, fear that are a result of our experience of types of betrayal. Okay, that is the crown of thorns, which is circular. At the end of the episode with the adulterous woman, only Jesus and the woman is left. The round represents the woman. It is like a breast, it is like a womb. It would be softer. The single thorn that remains is a phallic symbol, and it's also like a part, like something that would grow in a rose. It's Jesus. Think about Jesus on the cross as like a flower. That's him. Now look at the difference. If you think about a crown of thorns, and you've plucked all the thorns off except one, there'll be a lot more of the circle than of the thorn. So here's Jesus' attitude. I'm this important, Mary's this important. So all of this accusation and all of this judgment and all of this pain is resolved by selflessness, by a death to self, by not being selfish. Instead of having all of these concerns, Mary and Martha at one point, they're two sisters, and they invite Jesus to their house, and Martha's all upset because she's doing all these preparations, and Mary is just sitting at Jesus' feet. And Martha says, Jesus, can you tell her to help me? And Jesus says, Mary, you are concerned with many things, Martha, when in fact only one is important. And so here you have the one thing, and it's instead of worrying about all kinds of societal expectations and judgment and having all of these trauma wounds from our experiences inside of us, if we can manage to die to self and like die as if our brain was erased, and then we could start over, then you end up with something that looks like this, like Q for queen. You end up with I'm small, I'm not unimportant, but I focus most on what's important for the people around me, what's important in my one eye. What can I do for the people around me? It's selflessness and death to self. And I have a lot more to say on this, and I said a bunch of stuff really fast, but that's the basic idea. Hang on, what's this here? This is phallic symbol, smaller in proportion. Yeah, don't take that to mean anything about me personally, or not. I'm making no claims about that right now.